why isn't the notion of justice a result of evolution? Perhaps in a world where the strongest survive, individuals as well as society itself would be more likely to exist if people were just, i.e. if people cared about others, helped others, etc.
Right. Well, now, look, that's exactly what, I remember I read that quote from C.S. Lewis. Lewis, of course, was an Oxford faculty member. Now, admittedly, he was, writing in the 30s and 40s of the 20th century, but he understood this too. If you say your very concept of justice is only there because it helped your ancestors pass on your genetic code, what that means is, and he knew this, what that means is certain behavior feels right and wrong, but it's not actually right and wrong. It just feels right and wrong because you are selfishly programmed by your DNA to feel that way. And he knew what the implication of that was. The implication was that there's no such thing as real justice. I feel that this is practical. I feel that this is just, but basically it's just a feeling. And he knew that the depth of the moral outrage that you really feel when you see injustice cannot be explained that way. See, when you see injustice, you don't want to just say that's impractical. When you see genocide, you don't want to just say, oh, gee, this isn't really the best way for us to, live as a human race. It's not practical. It's not a feeling. It's wrong. There's a woman at University of Rhode Island. I won't mention her name, even though it was an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education about 15 years ago. She was a cultural anthropologist. She was working in Africa. She was studying female, genital mutilation. And she was absolutely appalled by what was happening in the cultures that she was studying. She also knew, because she was a secular person, didn't believe in God, that her feelings that this was unjust were nothing but a genetic predisposition. She thought it might be impractical. That's probably not, it's impractical, and basically the human race won't get along as well if you do that. But then deep down in her heart, she says, no, I don't believe it's impractical. I believe it's wrong. I believe it's really wrong. And she didn't have any good warrant to say it. She realized that in her worldview, as a person who didn't believe in God, she had no right to tell another culture, what you're doing to these women is absolutely wrong. Not just impractical, not just I don't like it, wrong. She realized unless she believed in God, she couldn't say that. But guess what she did? She said, I still don't believe in God, but I'm going to say it anyway. And I'm going to live with the tension. Now, if you want to do that, that's fine. But you have to at least admit that this idea of real injustice and real true human rights fits better in a universe in which there's a God than in a universe in which there's not a God. So if you say, if you believe in a God, then it makes sense that there be human rights and there be such a thing as injustice. If you don't believe there's a God, then it's hard to, it's harder to come up with the idea of human rights. You say to yourself, I guess it's just a practical thing, but deep inside you say, no, it's more than a practical thing. You don't have to believe in God and in order to believe in human rights, but you see, it makes more sense to believe in human rights if there is a God. And so I'm just pushing back to the questioner, sorry, whoever you are, and saying, I really don't believe you believe it's just a genetically conditioned response and an issue of pragmatism. I think you believe that stuff like that is really, really wrong, and I think that shows that in your heart of hearts, according to Romans 1, you do know there's a God. And that's pretty cheeky of me, but I got the microphone. You're sitting down there. I said to myself, why not? Okay.